This is part 2 of picking up stitches for fingers, and if you are stumbling upon this by accident, be sure and go watch part 1 first. When I left off, I was right at the place where I'm going to join one side of my middle finger to the other side of the middle finger. And most patterns will tell you to do a E cast on of 2 stitches, because I'm going to be putting on 2 stitches here, and that just never works. For one thing, as many times as I've tried it, no matter how tight you make those E stitches, they are always too damn tight, too loose. And so you have this huge slack that you have to go in and fiddle with when you finish the fingers. And so what I've been learning to do after 20 fingers, may I state, is I'm going to use a technique of a make one when I come back and work those stitches. And so what I'm going to do to give myself just a little bit of excess yarn is I'm going to make a yarn over, just a simple yarn over, and I'm going to then work over to the next stitch. And notice that I have a yarn over here, and that's giving me a little bit of slack between those stitches, and you'll see what I do on the other side. And I'm sorry for this, it is a hot, 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 humid day here in Kentucky, rainy, 4th of July. And this yarn is sticky, and these needles are even stickier. Now, to work my first round over here, if you remember, I picked up 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the 2 center stitches with the other stitches on the side. I'm going to work them. Those are going to be the stitches that stay. The extra 2 stitches I'm going to work together with the stitch on the other side of the finger, and that's going to help me close up that hole a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is, because I want this stitch on the hand to be on top of the stitch over here, on this side I'm going to work an SSK, and on this side I'm going to work a knit 2 together, and that just makes it look a little neater. And again, I experimented with this on 20 fingers, and that's a method that I found works the best. Now here's another reason I keep my yarn tail so long. I can find that great big old tail and pull those stitches tight, because that's going to drive me nuts when I work these. So this is my last stitch on the hand, and these are the stitches I've picked up, and if I'm not sure where that is, that's going to tell me that's the first stitch I picked up. That's the one I'm going to want to work with, that one. So I'm going to work this stitch just normally. Oops, again, hot, sticky yarn. And I'm going to work an SSK. Now this is going to stretch all out of shape, because this last stitch is going to pull yarn from the previous stitches. I'm going to clean that up when I do my fingers, when I finish the fingers. I'm going to do an SSK, and notice how that's the loose end, so it's going to be really big. And am I going to panic? No. I'm just going to find that yarn tail that I've got down here, and I'm going to pull it tight, but I don't even need to do that. I can do it at the end. Now here are the 2 center stitches. Those are the ones that are going to actually be with the finger. 1, 2. And then I have my last stitch that I picked up and the first stitch on the other side of the hand. And because I want the hand stitch to be on top of the one that I've picked up, I'm going to work, whoops, a knit 2 together. Oops. All right. And so I've got my 2 stitches, and then I've got my hand stitches, or finger stitches, sorry. You try knitting 6 gloves in 4 days and see what it does to your brain. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and I'm picking the stitches up. And here's my last stitch before my yarn over, and I'm just going to drop that yarn over. And if you notice, look at all that slack yarn that I have. Now if I'd done an E cast on there, this would be like 3 or 4 times longer. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create stitches. Ugh, gloves are just so fussy. And I'm going to use the same technique I would if I were doing an M1. And I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to create a little loop over here, okay, and I'm going to knit into it. So that's just like an M1 that I would do any other time. I've still got a little bit of slack yarn there, and I'm going to make an M1. And again, you know, with all these needles, and these aren't very pointy. I like using much pointier needles. And there you go. So I've got my 2 stitches there, and notice there's still some slack yarn, but believe me, there is not as much. It's a much neater, cleaner way to do that than making those E-cast-ons. And now I'm just ready to knit in the round until I get my glove done. And you can see that I've done this on these other gloves. Now, I was experimenting with the techniques for picking up on these fingers, and so I'm not going to show you too closely how they look. And oh, that reminds me, I need to put a marker in here for my first round that I've picked up so I can count these guys. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one right there. Show you how I do this. This is actually my second round. I would have done this on the first, but I'll just remember that I'm putting this on row 2. Okay, I put my dental elastic on my little needle. I get my working yarn from somewhere. There we go. And I make the stitch. This is really convincing you that you want to make these gloves, right? And then I do like a slip it right on over, and it stays in there until I cut it off. Now what I have to do is remember that that's row 2. By the way, let me try on a glove. I made 2 pairs with the thumb on this side and one with the thumb offset, and you can see I put these guys on, and I haven't finished these obviously, that the reason I call them texting gloves is that you can smush down the finger to do your texting and then just pull them up, and it still keeps your fingers warm if you live in a climate where it gets cold like I do. There you go. That has it.